I used to be tired all the time and work, I worked a lot of hours, but I was exhausted all of that time. And now I work the same amount of hours doing different things, but I just have energy to burn from the time I get up till the time I go to bed.
Welcome to How I Lost It, where we learn the stories behind some of the biggest weight loss successes. I'm Marley Ficalora. Now let's begin our interview.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into the situation that you were in, how you gained the weight, how you opened the restaurant, and just a little bit of background so we can learn about you.
I'll go back. I actually grew up a really kind of skinny kid. I couldn't get over 135 pounds my whole life. I wrestled as a teenager. I was a wrestling team captain, and I barely made weight. We had a pretty small team, so I was always wrestling up weight. So that was never an issue. And then I got to college, and I worked the graveyard shift in a 24-hour restaurant. And I would work overnight, and then I go back to the school and the dorms and eat the at the cafeteria this huge breakfast because I was famished by then. Go to school all day. I was the class president as well, so on the days that we had student government, I got no sleep because I worked the graveyard shift. So I started to gain a little bit of weight. I think part of it is I filled out in college. So I got to, maybe 165 pounds, something like that. I'm all of 5'9", so that's pretty average. I have a fairly stocky build, so then I got married, and my wife loved to bake, so I always struggled with that extra 20 to 40 pounds. I manage restaurants and different things like that, so it was a struggle. And at some point, I found the low carb, high protein diet. So I could go on that for a little while and maybe drop a few pounds, but really it was always a struggle. And as soon as I returned to normal eating, even if I cut sweets, I'd put the weight back on. So it was always just sort of a yo-yo effect. In 2011, I took over a small restaurant in the town that I live in. I'm in Southeast Michigan, and we turned it into a barbecue joint. It was a pretty popular restaurant, really kind of a going concern. We ended up doing two food trucks as well, food trailers. We did a lot of events, and over the course of owning that restaurant, so it was almost 6 years, I gained 20 to 25 pounds a year, and I ended up at 348 pounds. Um, so that was from 2011 to the end of 2016. And in 2015, I started, having some pretty decent health issues. I wasn't checking my blood pressure, getting my blood work done, that type of thing. But I developed really bad sleep apnea, so I was just exhausted all the time, falling asleep. As soon as I'd sit down, we'd put in about 90 hours a week at the restaurant, and yeah, it was pretty miserable, to say the least. In 2015, I also developed severe edema, so my hands, feet, and ankles would swell just horribly. And if you know what Crocs are, the shoe,
Yeah.
uh, so they make a kitchen style. They call it a bistro Croc that is a non-slip. Pretty comfortable for working in the kitchen. It got to a point where I had basically a full size over, and then I had to literally cut the top of the crock to get my foot in it because it was so swollen. And then at the end, I was just wearing slippers at work with no padding, and so my feet were hurting bad and that type of thing because I couldn't even put shoes on. So the edema was bad, and over the course of the roughly year and a half that I was suffering from the sleep apnea and the edema, I went to my primary care doctor, a couple of urgent cares, two hospitals as well. and really two very prominent hospitals. One was the University of Michigan healthcare system, which is a pretty big deal up here, very, very good medical care. The other one is St. Joseph Mercy, which is a very large organization as well. And um, interestingly, none of them addressed my diet, and none of them could really get to the core of what was causing the edema. And so this just persisted for so long, till the point that I was so miserable, and they just were giving me more drugs, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna, give you an EKG test and see how that works out." And that didn't really amount to anything. They weren't concerned about it. None of them, of the dozen plus doctors, two major healthcare systems and several urgent cares, ever addressed nutrition, and they never addressed my diet. They thought it was kind of cool that I had a barbecue restaurant. And they're like, "Oh, what do you smoke?" "Oh, yeah, brisket, pork, salmon, chicken, sausage, whatever." Um, so um, I the last hospital stay, that was October 2016. Um, I I was there. My family left for the night, and they were, obviously very concerned about me. And I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I felt miserable. I was having gastrointestinal pain, and that's why I went and checked myself in, because I said, this isn't right. On top of the edema, the horrible sleep apnea, the anxiety that I was having, and then just like really bad stomach pains, which, by the way, I'm almost 100% sure was from the drugs they were giving me. They just kept throwing pills at me, and they went to check me. Well, so 3 o'clock in the morning rolls around. I wake up and I'm like going, "I'm gonna freaking die here." And that's the way I felt. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I had no answers, and the doctors weren't giving me any answers either. So the next morning they said, "Well, we're going to let you go. We don't see anything." I was like, "Really?" I said, "I feel horrible." I said, "You guys haven't addressed the swelling that's going on in my hands and my feet, my legs. Um, I mean, my ankle was blown up like a balloon. It was pretty disgusting looking, and um, I mean, it was just a horrifying feeling, thinking that I'm going to die and they can't help me." So the next day, I called my mom and I said, "Mom, this is what they're telling me. They want me to take 8 more prescriptions on top of the 4,200 milligrams of ibuprofen I'm taking. That's 21 ibuprofen a day, 7 ibuprofen 3 times a day. That's a lot of painkiller, plus a painkiller, plus a anti-inflammatory, plus a muscle relaxer. And now they want to add 8 more." And she got pissed. And she said, "You know what? Don't fill those prescriptions. Food is medicine. Do the research." And I said, "Well, what else do I have to lose?" I couldn't go into work because I was, my health was in trouble. I couldn't even hardly be on my feet. I was scared to death. So what I started looking for was an anti-inflammatory diet. And feel free to ask questions or interject here.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I'm amazed by all the things that you were saying, because I'm amazed by it because so many people go through this. You're so not
Yeah.
alone. I see this,
No, I know. I know.
I see the stories, I see the messages, and you sound like so many other people, and and it's amazing the way you look right now. You look great. When
Thank
we can
you.
see you here,
Yeah.
and if you're listening to this, you're gonna listen to this on a podcast later on. You won't be able to see how good he looks, but it's wonderful to hear and see the transformation that's gone through you. We're gonna learn about that more. But people go through so much, and I get the long messages. I used to say all the time to my followers, "Guys, you were making me cry," because I see the amount
All right.
of
Yeah, I hear it all the time.
yeah. So it's true. It's honest. It's real. It's hard. It is hard because we don't learn anything about food, and we don't address the
Right.
power of food to either be very good for you or very dangerous
Yeah.
for you. And it puts you in a situation where you're so reliant upon these medical doctors and these pills that you become a product of their system. And it's unfortunate. I think doctors are doing a great thing. I think nurses are doing a great thing, and they're out there and they go to school for so long and have so much debt in order to help people.
Right.
And I have so many nurses and doctors that follow me and that are really pushing plant-based diets now. But at the end of the day, we got to stop overlooking what we're putting in our body. I always say it's the most important decision you make every single day is
Yeah.
what you
Every
eat.
bite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single bite is the difference between you having a healthier, longer life or a sicker and more troublesome life like you were going through. Sometimes it takes people to go through that. I call it the aha moment, the epiphany that you already mentioned it.
That's what it was. Yeah.
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 You already mentioned it. You already talked about it. It was being in that hospital room. And it can occur from something that happens to you, or it can occur from seeing something happen to a family member. It can happen to your uncle. It can happen to your cousin. It can
Yeah.
happen to your dad or your mom or your grandparents. But there's always
Right.
a moment where you say, okay, enough is enough. I see what's going on, and I
Right.
see the road that I'm going down or the road that I've already gone down, and I need to make a
Right.
change. So I'm inspired, man. I'm just listening to you over here, not asking any questions because I think your story is so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So, interesting that you talk about family members because part of my aha moment was there's some pretty decent longevity in my family. People that live into their 80s and 90s and probably could have beyond with proper diet. But I watched my grandfather, who's built just like me, had a similar life, worked hard, raised a big family, that type of thing. And I watched him suffer the last 10 to 12 years of his life. He lived till he was 92. And so part of my thinking was, you know what? I'm like maybe halfway through my life here, maybe a little more. And I want to grow old gracefully. I don't want to spend that last 10, 12 years in the hospitals. I hate hospitals. I do. I hate the smell of them. I hate the germs. It just grosses me out, right? So that was part of my journey, and we'll get into that in a second if you
Yeah.
have any questions.
Yeah, I think one thing that, and I might have to plug in my phone in a second. I'll take the earpods off, but we'll be fine. We'll make this work. Now that we're up and running. One thing I want to
Yeah,
talk about is the restaurant that you had. So you have this barbecue restaurant,
right.
and you've got all these smoked meats and all these different foods. But I want to know
Hmm.
more so than what you were cooking is what you were eating. What caused you to gain all that weight? What was your day-to-day diet like before you gained those hundred so on pounds?
Sure. So, part of my thinking, being able to lose weight on a low carb diet was, just eat more meat. And I had my share. Let me tell you, when you have unlimited amounts of meat in front of you, pork and brisket and salmon and chicken and smoked sausage and, gourmet hamburgers and you name it, I had my share. So, I mean, on the weekends I do hash browns and eggs and sausage and that type of thing. During the week, I had a big old salad for lunch with meat on it, and I had pork or brisket or whatever sounded good at the time. I ate a lot of beans and rice because that's one of my favorite things. So from my thinking and my standpoint, I was probably eating fairly healthy and had been for a lot of years. Meat is the center of the plate, right? Get your protein, um, and throw a bunch of vegetables in with it and keep your carbohydrates limited. And that's really kind of faulty thinking. And when you start switching that around and rethinking protein and rethinking carbohydrates, everything changes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so something I want to talk about is were you eating bread? Were you eating pasta? Were you eating refined carbohydrates like sugars and
So
such?
yeah. So my significant other certainly was a tremendous cook, and we indulged in plenty of ice cream and things like that. I think one of my downfalls was after moving to Michigan. We are microbrew capital of the world. And so, I would always try different microbrews and that type of thing. And, I call it a pork chop in a bottle because I mean, just these thick, heavy microbrews. So I think that added to it. But, a lot of it was just the heavy saturated fat and lots of dairy. I mean, fat turns to fat, period. Calories are calories any way you look at it. And if you fill your stomach with broccoli and you're full enough where you're not going to eat a ton of meat, I mean, the calorie density there is totally different than flopping that around and just adding a little broccoli, right? You know, you
Yeah.
can eat a ton of meat and get 10 times the calories that you can in the same gram weight of broccoli or whatever vegetable.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, from a standard American diet perspective, I'd say that I ate somewhat healthy, but it was just very saturated fat focused and lots of dairy.
Yeah. And you were up there in Michigan, and Michigan is known for its comfort food. And the word comfort food to me has always been my pet peeve because the word comfort
Yeah,
food should make you feel comfortable after you eat it. It shouldn't make you feel full and
it
that you
should,
can't
right?
move, and it shouldn't make you sick
Yeah,
because I always say there's nothing comfortable about being sick or being in a situation that you were in where you're in a hospital bed, you're
yeah,
taking 22 ibuprofens, or you're taking 15 medications. There's nothing comfortable about that. It's not
right,
fun, you know, and it's not a good experience for you or your family members that care about you. So comfort food to me
right.
is a nice, healthy, you know, salad or a nice, zucchini squash or a nice spaghetti squash with a nice tomato sauce or a fun, you know, buffalo cauliflower that's not fried. That's comfort food to me. Something that makes you feel good
Right.
and it tastes good. So you're up in Michigan. That's where comfort food capital of the world is. And
Yeah, one of them for sure.
yeah, so people are very used to eating food that really isn't healthy.
Yeah.
And so you're up there and you're running this barbecue joint and you're making all these smoked meats and you're eating, you know, you're saying your significant other is a chef, so you guys are having some fun, sure, using lots of butter, sugar, salt, oil,
Sure.
all that sort of stuff that cooks
Yep.
often use. And you say, you know, you're in this hospital, you have this aha moment, this epiphany, and you say enough is enough. I'm going to figure out a way to change this. And
Hmm.
so you tried the low carb, high fat diet, similar to keto, right? Would that be similar
So
to keto?
yeah, yeah. So that was before
Oh,
then. That
before.
wasn't
Okay,
at
that puts you in the
that point.
hospital.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that I mean that's essentially that thinking is what caused really all the issues was having that high fat mentality. So my after my aha moment and doing some of the research, I looked at basically, you know, what's a good anti-inflammatory diet?
Yeah,
What can I eat that's going to bring down the inflammation? And one of the things that I found was don't eat meat.
yeah,
So I dropped beef, chicken, and pork. I cut my dairy consumption, and you know, dairy's hard to give up, right? Down to very, very little, especially compared to what I was eating. And I still ate some fish and eggs, but the interesting thing is after dropping beef, chicken, and pork and dropping that dairy consumption down to like maybe a sixth of what I was eating, that edema that had persisted for a year and a half that the doctors couldn't take care of went away in 3 weeks.
wow,
And in 100 days, just doing that, I lost 80 pounds. The sleep apnea went away. My blood pressure normalized. And, you know, I'm sure there were some other things that started to happen. And, you know, I started to feel really good. So that was October 2016. And about 5 months into that journey, I watched Forks Over Knives.
yep,
And I said, I'm going to stop eating dairy. That has no place in human health. So I ditched the dairy, and I had struggled with lifelong anxiety, you know, just that gripping, like intense, you know, what I gotta keep moving, you know, I just anxiety. And anyone who's dealt with that knows what I'm talking about. After ditching the dairy, man, that went away in another 3 weeks. Gone. That anxiety, lifelong struggle, magically disappeared. So, you know, I was like, all right, uh, I feel great. There's something to this. So I started doing a little bit more research and looking at protein sources and realized that all plants have protein and I don't need fish. And there's so many toxins in the ocean that that needs to be cut out of that diet. And then about a month later, I did a blood test and my cholesterol was just a hair high, like 202 total cholesterol. And I remember the doctor saying, you know, well, I know you're eating mostly a plant-based diet, but, you know, even some vegans need statins. And I said, no, I've controlled everything else with diet. I'm going to stop eating eggs. Well, guess what happened? The cholesterol dropped
Yep.
and went way into the normal range. So, I mean, you're just talking one thing after another. So I started looking for more protein sources because this was my thinking that, you got to have your protein. And I came across a really old Dr. Michael Greger video. And I mean, we're talking like he still had hair and he had a little bit of a belly and he was wearing a really ugly brown 70s plaid shirt. He was lecturing at some, hall or university or something. I mean, it was an old video. And I listened to him and I said, "This guy's right on." So I looked him up. Then I came across some nutrition facts videos from nutritionfacts.org, and I started following that rigorously. And I'm like, man, this guy's right on. He's got all the science there. This is making sense to me. This is what's been working for me. So, I continued on, and I decided that, well, I'm doing a vegan diet.
Yeah.
So let's look into this some more. So I started looking, and I realized that, vegan is great, and I certainly identify as a vegan at this point in my life, but that vegan isn't necessarily healthy because you can have a lot of vegan junk food. I tried the replacement cheeses and the replacement meats and things like that, but I really discovered the power of a whole food plant-based diet, and eating really just from the earth, and with limited refined anything. And as I've kind of gone further on, I've now dropped oil out of my diet and that type of thing. So it was a little bit of a process. It was about a 6-month transition total for me to be whole food plant based, except for oil. That took another 6 months until, I'm a chef, so figuring out from a commercial perspective how to cook without oil was different for me. It's not hard, but it was different. It was a learning curve. And now that I don't cook with any oil, and the difference between, like, if I eat out and there's food with oil in it and I feel a little sluggish afterwards versus like eating at home super clean, I notice the difference now. Even a little bit of oil on my lips that's in food, I just am like, oh, it's such a massive difference in the way I feel. And one of the things that we had talked about before via messages is that the energy levels are astronomical. I used to be tired all the time and work, I worked a lot of hours, but I was exhausted all of that time. And now I work the same amount of hours doing different things, but I just have energy to burn from the time I get up till the time I go to bed.
Yeah.
And the mental clarity is amazing and that type of thing. And I don't get that sluggishness after meals, none of that. So it's been such a huge transformation for me, both physically. I mean, now I'm down 168 pounds, and sorry to show off, but I'm almost 50 years old, and this is some frickin' muscle, right? I've never had that kind of muscle. And and I don't kill myself in the gym or anything like that, but I have, I go and I work out, and I can work out 3 hours hard, full body workout, not be sore, not have a long recovery time, have energy, tons of energy afterwards. I'll bike 4 miles up to my rec center, work out 3 hours, bike 4 miles back, and can't hardly sit still. It blows my mind what the body is capable of when it's burning the right fuel.
Yeah. Let's talk about, so one of the things that happened was you were a barbecue restaurant owner, right? And then
Yeah,
you make this switch to a plant-based, well, a vegan diet, then a plant-based diet. And you're up there in Michigan. Are you still in Michigan?
I am indeed.
So you're up there in Michigan. There's probably not a ton of vegans or a ton of plant-based people, but you know the power.
Oh, you'd be surprised, but
Yeah,
I'll tell you about that in a minute.
it's changing. Oh, it's definitely changing. So I was
Yeah,
actually a lifelong vegetarian. I was born never eating meat or fish in my entire life. And I've seen it change so much, and it's so amazing and so wonderful to see the growth of this
right,
for so many different reasons that we can talk about later. But one thing that is interesting is when I grew up, there was no one else that did it. And a lot of
right,
people on here are doing this for multiple reasons. And one of them is being just to give themselves a little bit of an easier time getting out of bed, trying to just
Hmm.
make life a little simpler and figure out how they can get their health back on track, just like you did.
Right.
So many people want to have that turnaround and that aha moment that you had so they can live your life. They can flex their muscles like you are, which is so awesome. They can go for bikes. They can have that high energy. They can put a smile back on their face because people deserve to be happy. Everyone deserves the chance to live a healthy and happy life. And
Absolutely.
and the hard part is that a lot of people aren't right now. A lot of people are sick. A lot of people are sick more than ever before in the history of our planet. Have we had so many people with diseases that are so chronic and so debilitating that it's our hospitals are full, and it's really, really something we got to work on. So I want to make sure that people that do this, they make the switch to a plant-based diet, they switch to a vegan diet, that they're accepted, that they're open arms for this, right? That people are encouraged, because a lot of people are in families is one person out of four, right, that's eating this way, and the other three are still
All
eating
right.
the standard
Yeah.
American diet. So you're there
Yeah.
cooking up your salad, you're there cooking up a night. We know there's a million different meals. You're doing a nice coconut curry, right? You're cooking that at home, and then your kids and your husband come home and they bring home McDonald's or Burger King or Taco Bell or KFC, and you're at the table and you're eating your meal. And I have two roommates, they eat like that, right? My two roommates, they eat frozen pizzas, they eat ice cream, they eat all these things that I wouldn't eat in a million years. All the things that I'm on here every single day cooking meals for the last 400 something days out of the produce section advocating against, because I see messages from you and other people going through such severe diseases and hard times. So how did you make that switch? Was there pressure from family members saying like, what are you doing? Where are you going to get your protein? How are you going to do this? Or was everyone like, you know what, you've gone through such hard times that we just want to see you try something to get better?
Oh, that's a big question, my friend. So the there's a couple of different categories of, family and friends here for sure. The restaurant was my partner and my girlfriend, and her daughter was involved with the restaurant as well. We had a slew of employees and that type of thing. So when I got sick, my mom fortunately lived nearby, and she insisted that I, come here, get healthy, do whatever you got to do, right? And so I had to step back from the business. So I was still involved with doing the taxes and doing books and booking events for our food trailers, and um, doing whatever I could to help out, and I'd come in now and again, but I just generally couldn't be there because I just couldn't be on my feet and whatever. And it took, a couple months to get several months to get back to normal. So I got a lot of pushback from my partner, and at the time it was interesting because I had done a little bit of research on hottest trends for 2017, and they're like vegan menu items, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, and as I'm like transitioning really more to a plant-based diet, I was like, well, that makes sense, we should probably do that. And I noticed that there was certainly a lot more people, even in the barbecue restaurant, calling ahead of time and saying, do you guys have some vegan options and that type of thing? I'm going there with a friend. And so, we'd accommodate, and, we had a number of items that were vegan compliant. Um, so I was trying to develop some menu items and that type of thing. I got a lot of pushback. I was fortunate to have the support of my mom, but I really had nobody else. This was very much a go it on your own type of thing. So I had to discover it on my own. And nowadays, I mean, life has changed a lot in the last 2 years, where there's a lot more support. There's a lot more support groups. There's a lot more resources. There's way more vegan food. The fact that not that I advocate them because of the junk in them, but the Beyond Beef and the different cheeses and the Impossible Burger in the chains across the U.S. I can get it at my local pub in a small town. I mean, it blows my mind. It's changed a lot, and we've gone from having dairy as the in every dairy case, that's the center, and now this stuff doesn't hardly sell, and all the nut milks are sold out. I mean, I'm watching this transition, and it blows me away. And we're watching things like the IPCC report, and Canada just said, eat mostly vegetables, get your protein from plant sources, and these are amazing things that have happened very recently. So the switch is going on, but I really had to go it on my own, and I saw my partner pushing me further away and whatnot, and so I tried to do what was fair and what was equitable, and not get into a legal battle and that type of thing. So I did end up literally signing everything over and allowing her to take over the business and do what she wanted with it. Um, and karma speaks, and the place burned down 5 months later. So,
Oh man,
hey,
but it's hard. You put a lot of. I mean, so I opened a restaurant this summer in the Hamptons,
yeah,
and anytime you open a restaurant, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It's not an
it is.
easy
Yeah,
industry.
people don't realize. Yeah, no, it's not at all. It's not at all. And physically, it's a lot of work, and the margins are really small. And then, once you get into the brick and mortar cost, that eats up your profits so fast. And so, there's a certain sweet spot where you have to get beyond that. And you and I can talk about that later if you need some help.
Yeah.
Um, but the struggle to get to that point is, I mean, blood, sweat, and tears is an understatement, brother. I mean, and we put in so many hours in the business, and
Yeah.
yeah, you're married to it.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting crossroad that you came to, because you came to a crossroad where you have this restaurant that is so near and dear to you, it's so important to you, but
And was doing well.
and it was doing well, and you put a lot of time into it, and
Yeah,
your big reason why it's doing well is because your efforts. And
yeah,
now you have to decide between that restaurant, but a lot of the food in that restaurant was what was causing the problems that you dealt
it
with.
was.
And you have to
Yeah,
decide between, do I stay with this restaurant, or do I do what I believe in now and what I've seen the power of? And that's
right.
a hard decision to make, but
It is. It is. But I guess I found out the hard way that if you don't have your health, you really don't have anything.
yeah.
And that was the tough decision. That was the deciding factor for me, that I said, it's make a change now, or die with it.
Yeah.
So I made the change, and it's unfortunate that a lot of people have to get to that point where they're really sick, and they're so tired of the medical community not addressing their issues, when the power is there way before that. Really, like what we were talking about, every meal, every bite you take. And so that's, I don't really prefer to be in the limelight, but I like to share the story because I want people to understand that they have the power. They have the power to take control of their life and take control of their health. I've seen people reverse type 2 diabetes, lupus, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis. I mean, the stories are amazing. And as Dr. Michael Clapper says, it's the food.
Yeah.
It's
It's,
the food. It's always been the food.
yeah, it's incredible. My dad suffers from multiple sclerosis. He was diagnosed around 30 years ago, and he met with a doctor named Dr. Swank, and Dr. Swank had put him on low saturated fat, similar to a plant-based diet at the time. He went on to influence Dr. McDougall, who everyone knows so well in this community,
Right.
with the starch diet and the starch solution. And he went on this diet. And so growing up my whole life, it was always about, and it was interesting because I had an interesting relationship with food. One is I didn't eat meat or fish. And two is that I was constantly telling my dad, and my mom was telling my dad, and my brother was telling my dad, you can't eat that. You know what I mean? If there was any candy, or my mom got chocolates given to her from like someone she was working with in business, or someone, or she got any sort of dessert or any of that sort of stuff, my dad would try to eat it. My mom would go, don't eat it. And she would yell at my dad, and I would yell at my dad, and we're all here yelling at my dad. And it's so interesting. We were yelling at him for trying to eat, food that was processed foods essentially throughout my life. And it wasn't yelling at him in like a way you would think like, oh, you're doing bad. What we were trying to do is help him, because we all understood, even at an age when I was like 3 or 4 years old, we understood the power of that food, and we wanted more than anything for my dad to be healthy. And so it's an interesting, it's the yin and yang. It's that crossroads that you come to. Do you get mad at someone because you want to do so good for them? You want to see them feel better. You want to see them succeed. Or do you just let them take comfort in the food, knowing that they're going to get sick and they're going to feel worse? And that's a tough question, a tough decision that you have to come to. And a lot of people are dealing with that. And you being in Michigan, you had to go alone at this. And it's not easy. I was alone in high school.
Right.
There was no one else eating like me. It is not, anyone who says it's
Right.
easy. I mean, it's easy to eat that way. We both know that now, looking back on it. Of course, it's easy. You just eat real food. It's that simple. But at the
Yeah.
time, with all the peer pressure and not knowing, is this the right thing or not? Until you get the results, which come a little bit later on. Maybe it may take a week, it may take a month, it may take 6 months, it may take a year. It takes time. Everything takes time. But going alone at it like you did, and then making that decision: do I stick with this restaurant that I put my heart and soul into, or do I keep going? But I from the bottom of my heart, I know you made the right decision, man. You're flexing,
Yeah.
you're biking, you're smiling.
Yeah.
That is so much more valuable than any restaurant, any friendship, anything in the world. Your health, your
Yeah.
happiness is the most important thing that you can own, and you know that. You went through everything. And so let's talk about some of the foods that you did eat to lose this weight, because you said you lost 80 pounds, right? You ended up losing 163 pounds, I believe.
168 now.
168. Wow, I don't want to sell you short. That's every pound counts. That's so impressive. So you lost 168 pounds. What was it that you were eating when you went whole food plant-based? I know you mentioned you would cut out and you were eating eggs. You cut those out. You were slowly transitioning. But
Right.
when you found it out, when you figured it out,
So-
you started eating.
So there's I guess two rules that I live by. I mean, we know that refined processed crap is just that. It's not good for you. I like bread, but I stick to whole grain stuff. I like my pasta, but I stick to whole grain. But I know that, the closer you eat to bedtime, the worse off you are. So, you need time to metabolize, and you need to give your bowel a break, and, have a have a fasting period and break it with breakfast. That's why we call it that, break your fast. Um, so, so the primary thing for me, I call it the 4 S's. And this is what I live by: soups, smoothies, stir fries, and salads. And you can pack a lot of nutrients in and be completely satiated with those things. In my smoothies, we're not talking, throwing some fruit in a blender. I put my greens, I put broccoli sprouts, I put seeds, I put nuts, I put, depending if I'm feeling, particularly hungry, I'll throw beans and quinoa in it. Same with the salads. It's not iceberg lettuce and some carrots shaved over the top. It's hearty greens, and it's nuts and seeds, and it's sometimes berries that I put on top of my salad. There's tomato, and there's cucumber, and there's peppers and quinoa and beans that I'll throw on top of the salad. Same with the stir fries. Same concept. I love Dr. Michael Greger's Daily Dozen app, because it helps you be a little bit more mindful of getting all your nutrients in. And then Dr. Furman has the G bombs, right? Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms. Where am I at here? Onions, mushrooms, berries, nuts, and seeds. So just being mindful of those things and making sure that you include those in to your daily regimen, I think is invaluable. So really, it's a matter of mindfulness, but also I make sure that my pantry is adequately stocked with all sorts of different things. So it's beans, it's various rice, it's various legumes, it's various lentils, it's I have a wide variety of product, and I buy my fresh produce real regularly, and my fruits and that type of thing. But having the right things on hand and having nothing of the wrong things on hand makes all the difference in the world. And I find that most people um, eat the same things over and over again. You order pizza once a week, you go get burgers once a week, you have these, this is your breakfast every day, or, 3 days a week this and 4 days a week that. This is generally what you eat for lunch. So you find those 25 to 30 replacement items that you absolutely love, your go-to recipes, and it just makes life a lot easier. I've created a whole bunch of one-pan dishes that, you basically start cooking this because it takes a little longer, throw everything in with your spices, mix it up, and 20 minutes later you got dinner. And, I do a Tuscan Pharaoh bean dish. I do a lentil potato spinach curry, just some different things like that that I absolutely love. And I'll eat them over and over and over again, like we all do with everything else, our pizza and our burgers and hot dogs if you eat hot dogs and that type of thing. But you just got to find those go-to recipes, and then you got to have your things that you can have some variety in, like the soup, salad, smoothies, and stir fries. Because you can make a stir fry 1,800 different ways. You can make it Szechuan one day, and you can make it sweet and sour the other day. You can make it with tamari and ginger another day. So there's a lot of ways to do it, and and so I try and encourage people to just find those things and look at it as easy, because it's it's really not difficult, and it's way cheaper
Yeah.
when you're not spending your meat on meat and dairy products. It's way cheaper to eat beans and fresh produce, and seasonally available produce as well. So, so I guess I hope that sums it up for what I eat today.
Yeah. And so you had an advantage, obviously, of being a chef, being a restaurant owner.
It does help, yeah, yeah.
But still, you went against what you knew. You were using oil, you were using butter, you were cooking the way that most chefs cook in America. And when you made that switch, what were some resources that you looked into? Or did you use your culinary background? What was it that allowed you to make this transition?
I think for one, just I have a really good ability to do research, so I know the right keywords and that type of thing to use. But as far as resources are concerned, I mean, I do have my favorites. Connoisseurus Veg. I can't remember the lady's name that runs that blog. I like Forks Over Knives, has got fantastic recipes. I have a new favorite, Monkey and Me Kitchen Adventures. If you've seen that, their food is amazing. So, what I started to look at was not vegan this and vegan that. I started looking at plant-based, whatever I was looking for, whether it be a Thai peanut sauce or that type of thing, and and then I realized that on just about any recipe I could eliminate the oil, because I've got good nonstick pans. I've got it's called a copper crisper. Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't. I haven't.
Okay, so it's similar concept to the air fryer, but it's super cheap, and it goes in your oven and you don't have to store an appliance. You can get it at Bed Bath and Beyond in the As Seen on TV section. Normally they're $20. You get your $5 Bed Bath and Beyond coupon in the mail. It's $15. So it's a copper basket that sits on a pan, so the air flows around whatever you're cooking. You throw it in your oven at whatever the temperature is, and it'll do just like an air fryer. So, copper crisper, I use scan pans, which are a good hard anodized, non-Teflon non-stick pan. I don't have to use any oil. I throw a little vegetable broth or water in to saute. You just turn the heat down, take a little bit longer. It's only 5 minutes longer. It's really not a big deal. Oil can speed up the process, but oil is just empty calories devoid of micronutrients and fiber, so it's a waste of time. Um, so, I think the, all you got to do is like look up, 30 oil-free dressings, and you'll come up with, there's so much information available out there on the internet. Pinterest has tons of recipes, but I named my few favorites there, and I encourage people to start there.
Yeah, definitely. And it's important to know that you want to just eat real food. Like to make this really, really, really
Absolutely.
simple.
Yep.
And you said one of the most important
Yep.
things. and they've seen, so many people that are going to watch this and they're going to listen to this, they've seen me over 400 days go to the grocery store, show my receipt, tell exactly how much this costs. And I want to be as
Cheap.
honest. Yeah, super cheap, mind-blowingly cheap. And
Yep.
I knew it was so cheap. And that's one of the reasons why I did this, because I know so many people, their budget or their amount of money they have influences a lot of their decisions. And that has caused all sorts of problems for us, because now we think we buy a supersized portion. It's cheaper, right? You get more food for less. Buying in bulk, that's a process that's been forever. You buy anything in bulk, you save more money. We did that with our fast food. You get a supersized meal, like a couple cents more. If you get a small drink and you get
and go to the bulk food store and figure. I mean, you can get nuts and beans and grains just so cheap, you know.
Yeah, so I wanted to show that it was super affordable, and
That's
I used the
cool.
bulk section. And then the other thing is I wanted to show, like, look at how accessible this is. Look, I wasn't a chef going into this. I think it's so amazing that you are, and maybe you could teach me some things. But I wasn't a chef going into this. I was just a regular guy going into the grocery store, holding up a camera and saying, banana 18 cents. I really just wanted to show, look, I didn't even have a baking tray, which is so funny. I literally had nothing. I was in an apartment with nothing. I just went to the grocery store. I had gone to some vegan festivals, and everything was fried. And the vegan movement turned into processed food, and which is great for the animals, great for the environment, but it was really bad for people's health. And I felt like even people going to vegan, going to keto, going to all these different diets, there was no hope for a lot of people, because their health was aspects of all those were becoming processed. And the underlying key factor to good health.
Well, and that's industry pandering to trends, and they're going to do what they can to get people addicted to that food. And it's sort of a combination of the refined carbohydrate and the fat that it's easy calories, and we're sort of pre-programmed as humans to go after that and to crave those easy calories. So you get that, kind of 50-50 combination of refined crap and fat. And it's like, yeah, I'll eat this. It tastes good. It feels good. It's at the moment, of course, but the consequences are potentially dire. And, and I'll mention this to you as well. I know a 25, um,
Sorry, I lost you. Can you say that again?
sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry. I have friends messaging me, and
Oh,
they're
that's
making me
okay.
laugh here because they're watching the program as well. Um, I have a 25-year this person that I met, 25-year vegan that had to have 3 stents in their heart arteries. They're they're what they're doing and that type of thing. Um, I can look at their feed and see where they eat and what they eat, and it's fried food. It's refined, processed crap. Um, so you don't have to do that. And great, we got a Gardein chicken nugget, and yeah, that's not real food.
Yeah.
The real food is, gosh, you get some red lentils and it's maybe 20 minutes. You throw it with some greens and a few, canned beans if you want to do canned beans. I mean, there's so many possibilities and so many things that you can put together. The flavors are endless, and you just get a good spice variety in your cupboard, and it's easy to cook that way.
Yeah.
So sorry, I don't know if I interrupted you, but
No, that was great. And I think that that's so essential. And growing up with the ethical and moral component and the environmental component being drilled
right,
into me since I was born, right? About my mom used to give me a little cow and a little pig, a little stuffed animals. And she would say, that's Mooey the cow and that's Porky the pig, and we don't eat them. They're our friends. And,
oh, nice.
and
Thanks, Mom.
yeah,
Right?
right. So since I was a kid, it was
Yeah,
drilled into me I would never eat meat or fish.
right,
There's just no way it was ever going to happen. And it
right.
was great. And it was great to have that instilled in me. And I still believe in that. But I also, from coming at this, I want to help people in no matter what any way I can. I want to help people. I want to be honest. I want to be truthful. And I want to give them the best tools in order to do what you did, which was reverse so many problems that you had. Get off of medication.
So many problems. Yeah.
Yeah, be able to live a healthier life, be able to go for those bike rides, be able to have that energy, be able to smile again. Because it's
Yeah.
crazy to think about it, but smiling is so much harder now than it ever was before, with so many people being sick. It's not a lot to smile about when you're in the hospital bed, or you're just, everything's coming down upon you. So I want to be as truthful as I possibly can be. And if that goes against going against vegan meat and vegan processed foods, when I'm trying to save Mooey the cow and Porky the pig, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to call out
Yeah.
the fake food.
Yay, good for you.
And that's why when you say that, and Plant Based Gabriel and Andrew Taylor say it, it's important. It's important because there's a lot of sick people, and you can be vegan for 25 years. I know vegans and other vegetarians that are very, very unhealthy. And it's because you have to eat real food. You have to eat fruits and vegetables in order to get those health benefits. And if we tell people, you go vegan, all of a sudden you're going to lose 100 pounds, your skin's going to clear up, you're going to feel amazing. I see all these times people are like, oh, reversed it with a vegan diet. It's very, very important that people realize you have to eat real food. There's no cheating. You can't eat, bread and wheat gluten and soy products every single day and think that you're going to get the results that other people were getting when they're eating whole food plant-based. Right. So it's just important that we're transparent and we're truthful and we're honest. And that's why I'm doing these interviews as well, and asking what you guys are eating. What were you eating before you gained the weight? What are you eating after that you lost the weight? Because people need transparency now more than ever before, with all these fad diets, with all these fake magic pills, with so much conflicting data. It's like, let's just get to the bottom of this. Let's tell the truth. And the truth really is, even if it goes against your own personal interests, my personal interest is to save the planet and to save animals. I care about animals more than anything in the world. And so my self-interest would be to do that. But this isn't about me. This is about helping people, save people, and give them honest, true advice. And so I think that's great that you said that. So you're making all these meals, you're cooking all these meals. Did you ever think, you know what? I'm a cook, I'm a chef, I am a previous restaurant owner. Maybe I'll go open a whole food plant-based restaurant.
The answer to that is no. So, and it's kind of a personal thing, and there's been a lot more changes and things that have happened since then. I started my blog. I think you've been there.
Yeah.
At arespectfullife.com. So, the one thing about a restaurant is you're really very married to it, and you're stuck there. And I just, I feel like there's a lot more for me. Well, and there has been. There's been a lot of development since then. So I didn't want to do that again. I didn't want to be tied back down to that. So that's part of the thing. What I help people, and I have, start vegan restaurants and transition some of their menu items to whole food plant-based items. Yeah, absolutely, and I do that. But for me personally, I've seen such a tremendous impact on my personal life, and then I've watched a whole bunch of other people reverse so many diseases and get off. I can think of one of my very close friends who dumped 22 medications. That's mind-blowing. People who suffered with 30 years of ulcerative colitis that reversed that. 30 years of irritable bowel syndrome and having serious gastrointestinal issues to get rid of that, and then be a triathlete and blow the world away. So I see those things, and so my reach needs to be bigger. I want to share it, and so my story's gone out there. It's been on several different platforms, Forks Over Knives and others. So back to what you were talking about, Michigan. A gentleman by the name of Paul Chatlin, who had a pretty bad heart condition, serious gripping angina, and he was pretty athletic and nothing abnormal, lived a general American diet life and wasn't like way overweight or anything like that. He played tennis almost on a professional level and was involved in all sorts of sports, and had all of a sudden, a bunch of heart disease, and he got lucky. He had a cardiologist that interned under Dr. Carl Esselstyn. And, after looking at his charts, he sent that information to Esselstyn. And right before Paul Chatlin was about to get his chest cracked open, his cardiologist got him on the phone with Dr. Esselstyn, and Dr. Esselstyn said, you got a choice. You can, get your chest cracked or go on a whole food plant-based diet and potentially not have to ever go through this again. So guess what he chose? So if you look up Paul Chatlin, he started the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group. It's pbnsg.org. That organization now in Southeast Michigan has many thousands of members. Our mailing list is up to almost 6,000 members. I would contend, are the largest group of its type doing plant-based nutrition support. We have 37 groups in and around Michigan, included in also Ohio and Windsor, Ontario. And we continue to expand that reach, where we give really very one-on-one support to people that wish to transition to a whole food plant-based diet. So I'm part of the organization as well, and I help lead the efforts to get as many people as we can on board. And so for us, we can do these type of podcasts, and we do them, and we have videos out, and we have our social media reach and that type of thing. But I think really where the rubber meets the road is what you do in your backyard. And so what we've done is to really focus on our local communities, building a sense of community, which is vitally important, and having people be able to surround themselves with like-minded whole food plant-based eaters. And we've been tremendously successful because of that community that we've built. We bring speakers in from all over. We've had, Dr. Greger and Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Campbell and Dr. Furman and Dr. Davis and, Juliana Haver and different people like that to come in, literally from all over the place. And although that's great, and we have those events and a lot of people come, we feel like really where the roots are is in the local communities and really making a difference there. We have small groups in hospitals, we have small groups in little communities all over the state, and then again in Ohio and now we're international in in Canada. But that's been the lifeblood of the organization. We don't make any money from those small groups, but we just feel like that's where it is, and that's where we really help people. So that's what I've been up to, and going from the barbecue restaurant owner to being out on my own and trying to figure out what the heck. I started the blog and whatever. Then I met this amazing group of people at Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group, based in Detroit, and I mean, these are my best friends, and we are making a tremendous community and a tremendous impact. Tim Kaufman, whom you probably know, comes out. Josh Lajani comes out now and again. I mean, it's just a tremendous group that all we want to do is just make a difference and help people get healthier, just like you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's so great. I always say in all my videos, and they probably heard me say it so much they're gonna laugh when they hear this. I always say it's like, so my girlfriend, she's a flight attendant for Delta Airlines. And I use this analogy because it really is so important. They always tell you, and some people are so confused, why are they telling us this? But put your mask on first before assisting others. And I think that really is
Right.
so true, because what you did is you put your mask on first. You took care of yourself. You got your health where you needed to be. You found the power of plants. You lost 168 pounds, which is amazing. You started to gain muscle. You started to gain, your skin. Everything happened for you. You got off all those medications. All these wonderful, amazing things allowed you to live a happier and healthier life. And once you got to a place that you were comfortable, then you said, okay, I know the power of this. It's helped me give me my life back. Now it's time for me to help others. It's time for me to take that mask that I put on myself, and it's time to put it on other people and start waking people up and showing people the life. Because it's a freaking blessing to be here, man. Like,
Yes,
I,
I agree.
I say it all the time. Nothing that I stress about in life will ever be as important as just being able to go walk outside. Just being able to, I know how lucky we are to see. I know how lucky we are to hear. I know how lucky we are to taste and to breathe. And I see my dad struggle so much, and it reminds me of how blessed we all are, even just to be living. And so for you to go out there and give people a chance to have a new lease on life, get a new opportunity at a local community level is so essential. And we need that grassroots movement. Just going people, telling your neighbor, telling your uncle, telling your cousin, telling your mom, and not being pushy or shovey or aggressive, because no one likes that, but just being
Right.
honest and saying like, hey, look, this is what I went through and this is how I changed it. And this can work for you as well. It's working for thousands
Right.
of people. This is happening now.
Thousands. Yep.
Yeah, I'm getting thousands of messages. You're getting thousands of messages. It's happening. We're just trying to speed up the process. It's going to happen either way. People are going back to
Yeah.
eating real food. It's just, does it happen in 10 years or does it happen in 1,000 years where we lose millions and millions of more great, amazing people? And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to speed this process up.
Right.
You're trying to speed this process up. And that's why I tell people, once you've got your mask on, guys, it's time to do this. Let's spread this word. Let's help people, because there's someone else in that hospital bed. There's someone else that's 400, 500 pounds, not happy, not enjoying their life, not looking in the mirror and smiling back at themselves. So let's get out there, let's inspire, and let's help others, because there's nothing more important than that.
Yeah. And one thing that I noticed about both you and I is that during this entire podcast, we're both smiling
Yeah,
and we're both happy, right?
yeah,
And that's one of the things that I noticed. I'm such a different person today than I was 2 years ago.
yeah.
I feel so good. I am happier than I've ever been in my entire life. I'm 48 years old, and I have no complaints. I mean, I feel good. I love my community. I don't even know what to tell you. It's
I
just
know.
been it's been such an amazing journey for me.
It's so crazy. It makes all those other things so obsolete when you feel the power of just being
Oh,
healthy.
wait. But bacon though.
Yeah, but bacon,
Yeah.
right? The happy hour at McDonald's. And I think
I
that,
know. You heard about that too, huh?
yeah, I think there needs to be responsibility at some point, and hopefully that occurs sooner than later as well. I think subsidizing the most dangerous food and the most dangerous number one killer of Americans is dangerous in general. Fruits and vegetables are already much more affordable than meat and dairy and processed foods. And guess what? They would be even more affordable if we subsidized the real food and not the fake food. Why are we giving
Right.
$17 billion to processed foods, processed meats, things that are listed on the World Health Organization as class 1 carcinogens? And so if there's thousands of studies out there, it's I I could go into that forever. But we're focused on
Yep.
you. We're focused on your journey, and
You're all right.
we'll wrap this up in a little bit. But I think what you're doing, and how you said you could have opened another restaurant, which would be equally important. And there's a lot of people that are opening plant-based restaurants, and we don't want to take anything away from them because they're doing such great work. And there's a lot of doctors out there now that used to advocate for, hey, you need to eat eggs, you need to eat fish, you need to eat meat, and now they're telling people to eat plants, fruits, and vegetables, and they're helping a lot of people as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about doing this. No one's going to do this on their own. It's not going to be one social media star. It's not going to be one grassroots person. It's not going to be one doctor.
Right.
It's going to take a movement to make this change, because again, it's that one. And I say this, and I know it's important, and you going alone on this, you were strong-willed, you had a determination and a goal, and you achieved it. But if you're not fully committed to this, if you haven't told yourself, like, I'm going to get healthy, I'm ready to do this, I'm doing this for my life, and I'm making myself better, then it's so easy to be coerced by either friends or family members, by McDonald's, by Taco Bell, by advertisements, by society in general, by stadiums, by schools, by hospitals, by all these places on the outside. It feels like everyone is trying to stick processed food in your face and trying to get you eat the food
Right.
that puts you in a bad position in the first place. So
Yeah, let me say this much too. Here's an interesting thing that I've seen with people is that take a chance, go 100% all in for 45 days. See what happens. And what I find is that when people make that commitment and do it, they never go back because you feel so much better. It's just mind blowing. You know, people that have had cystic acne all their lives, or rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, type 2 diabetes. I mean, you can reverse type 2 diabetes so easily on a plant-based diet with 73% carbohydrates. This has been proven over and over again in studies. Do it.
Yeah.
Find out what happens. You'll never go back. You'll never go back when you start to feel that power and the energy. 45 days. Just do it.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that everything starts to get easier because your taste buds change, your cravings change, and it just becomes autopilot. That's why people don't go back. And that's why another good thing about the advocation of a plant-based diet is if you do this and you stick to it, a whole food plant-based, you eat fruits, you eat vegetables, your cravings, your taste buds, your budget, you save a lot more money.
Your microbiome too. The microbiome changes so much that when you smell things like cooking fat, it smells disgusting because now you probably can't digest it because your microbiome's changed so much. You know, and we're learning more and more about that. But you know that's also a factor that plays a role, and it does. It all changes. Your mentality changes. Your taste buds change. Your microbiome changes. You know, when you feel the antioxidants pumping through your veins and you don't have that sluggishness after meals, why would you go back?
It's addicting, man. It's addicting. And that's the coolest part.
I
It's
know, it feels
addicting in
good.
the best kind of way. And you know,
It is.
and you know, you said this earlier in the podcast, and it's so awesome because I am so anti-oil. So it must have been a few months ago, maybe 3-4 months ago. So I hadn't eaten oil for a year and a half, and I had a French
Mm-hmm.
fry. I had a French fry, and it was a standard American French fry, which is you take a potato, which is a starch that's super healthy for you, and you dunk it in a vat of oil, which is super unhealthy for you, empty
Right.
calories, high in fat, bad for endothelial cells. And I tasted it, and it tasted so bad. The same French fry that I had 2 years earlier from the same exact place that tasted so good tasted so bad. I mean, so bad it wasn't even edible.
Right.
And it was because all I tasted was oil. It was like a heightened sense of oil. It tasted so oily and so gross that nothing
Right.
had changed except for the way that I thought about food, the way that I craved food, and that was a true testament to the power of this. It just gets easy, but you have to stick to it. You have to
Right.
be truthful to it.
So let's, you know, since we're on the topic, let's talk about oil for a minute. Interesting, gram for gram, oil has the same amount of calories as beef fat.
Yeah.
So we're talking olive oil, canola oil, whatever you think is healthy, same amount. And coconut oil, which is, you know, some people try to sell off as a health food, is 90% saturated fat. Lard is only 40%. There's more saturated fat in coconut oil than there is in tallow in beef lard. And you know, if you think about 1 tablespoon of oil has 120 calories and 14 grams of fat, a 130-pound woman has to jog 1.2 miles just to burn off that 1 tablespoon of oil. So, you know, and then they've done studies with even within, you know, if doesn't matter what oil you consume, whether it's olive oil, corn oil, palm oil, canola oil. If you ingest the oil, they've done studies on the jugular veins, the brachial artery tests, and flow mediated dilation. And what happens is your arteries stiffen and the blood flow slows down. It just, you know, we've done the studies. Oil is purely fat. It's empty calories. There's no micronutrients in it, virtually none anyway. There's no fiber in it. It takes 44 olives to make a tablespoon of oil. Eat the damn olives. You'll have 6 of them.
Yeah.
You know, you'll get good healthy fats that way, but eat the olives, don't eat the oil. Get a nonstick pan, slow it down, throw a little vegetable broth in there, you're fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's so interesting that you said that because no one uses 1 tablespoon of oil. We always talk about this. You're talking about it. I'm talking about it. 120 calories per tablespoon.
Right.
You tell me one person in the world that cooks with oil, that cooks with 1 tablespoon. Doesn't happen. We got deep fryers full
No.
of vats. We got deep fryers full of like 1 million calories, literally.
Right,
And
right.
then
And sometimes I watch these vegan videos with these recipes that look good, and they're doing this you pulse this in the food processor, and you saute this, and you add this, and they are putting, like, in one recipe, almost a cup of oil. Dr. David Katz, he's a Yale guy, and he's quite brilliant. He'll say that, in an optimally healthy diet, a little bit of olive oil probably won't hurt you. But the problem with Americans is we don't know how to moderate anything.
yeah,
And so it's like, oh, I've watched these people dump so much olive oil thinking that, oh, it's healthy fats and it's good. But the 44 olives on 1 tablespoon, you don't need that. I mean, there's nothing natural about that. And then there's no fiber in it either. And, with the new reports that have come out, that we need a lot of fiber in our diets if you want to thwart other diseases and reverse type 2 diabetes. You got to have fiber.
yeah. Yeah, and it's amazing. When you go back to the science and the education, one, we don't get educated very much when we're little. We just don't. We don't learn about food. We don't know how to cook food, and we don't get taught
Yep.
about food.
And neither do our doctors. They receive on average less than 20 hours of nutrition education in their entire medical schooling. Less than 20 hours, and you rely on your doctor for all of your health needs. That's kind of ridiculous. I have hundreds of times more than that, than any doctor that goes through traditional medical school.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing the lack of education that we have for food, and that's
Yeah,
one of
it
the
is.
reasons
I
why
know,
we're in
it's
the
scary.
situation that we're in. Because for some,
Yep.
I don't know why, it's mind blowing that for some reason we just forgot about what we were eating. We forgot about the fuel. We're made of these millions of cells, and we're feeding them every single day, and yet we forgot
Right.
that if they go wrong or awry or they go bad or they make us sick, we're like, wait, what? How did that happen? I'm going to take medicine. I'm going to take. We don't think about preventative. We think about already taking care of the problem after it's already occurred. And that's
Yeah, well, we're kind of a easy fix pill based society. If you can't get it up, take Viagra. If your blood pressure goes high, take a pill.
yeah. And there's really no easy way out of it because you're just
No.
prolonging the inevitable, which is going to be bad health and hard times. And so it's really essential that in order to achieve the health results that you want, in order to see in so many of these commercials you see for these health pills and all these guys, they look great, they're smiling, these older men that probably don't even eat the way that would have put them in that situation or don't have the diseases that
Right.
they're advertising for anyway, they're actors. But it's important that people realize to get that there's no shortcut. It's extremely easy to eat fruits and
Right.
vegetables. Both of us know this. It's extremely easy.
Yep.
It's extremely affordable. It's extremely accessible. There's a produce section at every grocery store. If you live in any major city or any major town or even small towns, and even in the middle of the jungle, they have a lot of fruits and vegetables. So it's
Yep.
extremely accessible. It's extremely affordable. It's super, super easy. And you save a ton of money. But the hardest part is that you have to go against everything that you know. You have to go against not using
Right.
oil in the pan and not using butter in the pan, not having a protein with every single meal, aka a steak or all of these things that we're so used to eating. It's going against eating McDonald's. It's going against eating Taco Bell. It's going against all of your childhood favorites, all of those classics, all the comfort food. It's going against
Right.
all that you know. And anytime you make any little change, I mean, people waking up at a different time every day is hard. People choosing different colored socks than they were used to wearing is hard. So when you tell people
Right.
everything you know about food, even though you learned nothing about food in your entire life, it was passed down to you from
Right.
commercials or your parents who were advertised by commercials, you are going to have to change. And that's the
Yeah,
hardest part.
so it's interesting that you mentioned that. There's two things that I think of, when it comes to that. One is that, um, when call it, you take the right pill and you wake up,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you feel like enlightened. It's real easy to be upset and angry, to realize what we've done to this planet, to realize how industry has sold us this line of bull smucky,
Yeah.
and we're feeding our bodies this garbage because we thought that it was okay, and we thought that that was normal. and you wake up to the horrors of animal agriculture and the destruction of the environment, it's really easy to be super angry. But I think that we all got to realize that we sort of got sold a bill of lies, and we've got to realize that we're all there. We have to have some compassion for other people and really look out for the greater good of other people.
Yeah.
The second point I can't remember right this second, but I'll get back to it.
Yeah. But that's important. We were sold a lie, and it's really important to be understanding with other people, be compassionate and kind, and not be pushy or judgmental, because that doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help anyone if you say like, oh, you look this way, or oh, you have this problem. The best way to go about this is say, this is what happens when you eat this. Educate people. Really, it's all about education in a friendly, kind way, and that is going to get you better results than you could ever imagine. Kindness and compassion go so much further than anger and hate. And I know, like you said, it's hard when you see the environment getting destroyed. It's hard when you see billions of animals dying. It's hard when you see millions of people dying, not to scream and say like, how is this happening? Why is this happening? How do we stop this? Especially people, so many people care. Like I care so much about people, and I see the messages, and I know that that's an individual person that can live such a better life, and is going to live such a better life once we get them there. But it's hard not to get mad. It's hard not to get angry.
It is.
But what you really need to do is inspire rather than get mad, because if you're getting mad, you're just feeding into the rest of that stuff, and no one wants to listen to someone if you're shouting at them or you're yelling at them. You have to be, even with my dad, we always told him you can't eat that. It was never like, you can't eat that. It was like, hey, you shouldn't eat this, pull away from him, this is what you should be eating. It was in a kind way, and that, guiding my dad rather than, chastising him or making him feel like he was bad in some way.
Right. And I think living by example is good as well. If you want to make a difference and you switch over to a vegan diet, nothing changes in your life. What happens if you go whole food plant-based? And people notice, people notice that, wow, your skin is glowing. Wow, you're thin. Wow, you're gaining muscle. Live by example, and that does speak a volume to many people, or many volumes perhaps. But so that's that's part of my thing too, is that I people in my community don't even recognize me. They look at me, and people that have been my customer for years, and I'll say hi in the grocery store, and they look at me. I'm like, oh, you don't remember me, do you? I said I used to be 350 pounds and own the barbecue joint downtown. Oh, Jeff, how are you? And they're shocked, which is fine. And they're like, what did you do? I said, well, I cut out processed crap and saturated fat, which means meat and dairy. And they're like, okay. And some people, they want to know more and whatever, and other people are like, oh, okay, that's great. As they've got their, their standard American pizzas in the grocery cart, that type of thing. A lot of people just don't keep bumping along. They don't want any rocking the boat. They don't want to have to make a change. And that was the other thing that I was getting to, Marley. The second point is that behavior change is extremely difficult. And, as our organization, the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group, gets into some other working with other companies and organizations, we realize that there's a very, very important aspect to that behavior change, and it's not a flip the switch type of thing. Some people it is. I have a friend that watched a documentary and then binge watched a bunch of others, and overnight she made a change. Overnight. Most of us, like me, took 5 or 6 months, or sometimes a whole lot more. But behavior change really is sort of the paramount to, and I don't know what your experience is there, but to making a bigger shift. And so, like Dr. Doug Lyle has some pretty good material on that. And you know, we as an organization are trying to delve more into that and really understand the psychological aspect of behavior change, because that's really what it is. You know, making changes from the things that you've done your entire life and that you've been taught and you've been learned in school and everything else. It's not easy. And there is that aspect. So, you know, maybe the switch will flip, or maybe you go through a process. I'm not really sure what it is. I'd like to have the answers, right,
Yeah.
at my fingertips to help as many people as possible. But that's an important aspect. So I'll let you talk there.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most challenging things, getting people to change
It is.
from things that they have known their whole life. And I think
Right.
it's unrealistic to think that everyone's just going to change in one day. Like all of a sudden they're going to watch all those documentaries, which are great. It reinforces the science and the medical studies and the truth behind this movement. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing to get people to change is to encourage them, and to what you just said, lead by example and be really truthful and honest. Like if you're living this way and you're eating this way, like say you slipped up and you had a French fry with some oil, you can tell people that. Like don't, and live this life. Don't, so many people are pushing
Right.
pills or pushing diets, not even eating the diet, they're not even doing the pills. You've got environmentalists that eat steaks. If you're going to do something, be truthful and honest, because that will resonate with people more than anything else will ever resonate.
Right.
And that will change people more than anything else will ever change people, because honesty is you can't see through it. It's real. And I think that's important. You're living the truth of that. You know, you lost 168 pounds eating fruits and vegetables. And I had another Jeffrey on, a lot of Jeffreys on here.
Was that Duchette?
I had another Jeffrey.
Is that Chef Jeff Duchette?
No, this is a different Jeffrey. It
No.
was
Now there's another one. There's another one of us
another
out
one.
there.
Is a lot of Jeffreys. Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But there was another Jeffrey, and you know, he had sent over a written bio for him, and so I just posted his bio on the page, and he said, "Well, I didn't actually lose the 300 pounds by eating only plant-based. I lost 60, or no, he lost 70 pounds of it by eating that way, around there." But he had lost 200 pounds by reducing his intake of food, reducing his calories, and doing.
Yeah, caloric restriction will cause you to lose weight, but you know, long term, it's like the low carb diet and the keto diet. You can lose weight. You can do it on a McDonald's diet. You can do it on the Jared Subway diet. You restrict calories, you're going to lose weight.
Yeah.
You expend more energy, kill yourself at the gym, and eat the same amount of food, you're probably going to lose weight. But you know, long-term effect on your endothelial cells, the cells that line all of our arteries in our heart, by taking in a bunch of saturated fat and that type of thing is not good. And the long-term result is atherosclerotic plaque, heart disease, diabetes. You know, you can reverse type 2 diabetes in the short term and kill it in the long term by eating a bunch of saturated fat on a low carb diet.
Yeah.
Go for it. You want to do that? You want to keep killing yourself? Keep eating the saturated fat. But the research is there. The facts are there. You know, if you listen to all those low carb purveyors that really have a bunch of financial gain to keep spreading their misinformation, versus the people that put out information about whole food plant-based diets that aren't gaining anything from giving this information. I mean, nutritionfacts.org, it's a non-profit organization. Any of the monies besides speaking fees that Michael Greger makes, even the money from the sales of his #1 New York best-selling Times book, goes back into the 501c3, you know, nonprofit organization. Good information. There's lots of good people that put out good information. Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and the Plantrition Project and so many others that continue to help as many people as possible without financial gain.
Yeah, and I think so, and I think that's great too.
Take a look at
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I know all about it, and everyone else
Yeah.
who's watching this and listening to this should check it out as well. It's amazing, these nonprofit organizations and people giving a
Yeah,
lot
for
of their
sure.
time to help people, because that's what they believe in. They want to see people genuinely feel better. And a lot of doctors and nurses, they go, like I said, they go into this profession. Anyone who goes into medical school and racks up that much debt, and you tell me they don't want to help people as their life, they're putting a lot of their life. And I know you're smiling, but even if they're misguided, they don't have the right education. At the end of the day, they're setting out to help people. And if you talk about like Jeffrey, the other Jeffrey, we got two Jeffreys here. He so he ended, now he's fully whole food plant based. But what the great part about him is he was just being honest and he was being truthful, and that's going to resonate with so many others. And a lot of people did. I got so many messages from people, and he got so many people following him and asking him questions because he was truthful, he was honest. And it doesn't have to always be perfect, you know. Like I think that's an essential thing that people realize too. Like, is it easier if you go 100% like this? You only eat fruits and vegetables? Of course. Your cravings change quicker. Your taste buds change quicker, and you start to get the benefits faster. So yes, if you can switch into this on 100%, it's going to be easier for you. But if you don't get there and you cheat, like, be honest with yourself and say like, okay, this wasn't good what I ate, and this was good. I need to get to the point where I'm eating just the good stuff. Because I think if you're lying to yourself and you're saying, because I see this happen all the time, and I'm sure you see it all as well. People will say, and it hasn't happened, like almost everyone in the Produce Section Challenge group has lost weight or gotten results, but sometimes I'll see them post somewhere else on Facebook because your feed sees all these different people posting like crazy. But you'll see one and someone will post and say like, I haven't lost any weight on a vegan diet. And then you go and you see and you look through what they've been eating, and it's like pasta and it's bread and it's fake meat, lots and lots of fake meat and lots of fake cheese. And of course, we're never gonna like say anything bad to them, but you realize really quickly they weren't honest to themselves. They weren't doing a whole food plant-based diet.
Right.
They say, look, I'm eating plant-based, I'm not losing weight, this must be a terrible diet, it's not working, but they never did it in the first place. And that's the dangerous, you know.
The interesting thing, I spend probably way too much time in the low carb community, and there are plenty of well, there's a, let's say there's a good handful of people that say, well, I was on a vegan diet, and you know, I lost 30 pounds over, and one of the guys was you know, a 400-pound plus guy. I lost 30 pounds over a year time. And I'm like, you weren't eating a whole food plant-based diet. Oh, yes, I was. You know, and he argued with me. I said, no, you weren't, because I know how many calories are in a whole food plant-based diet, and even if you eat a ton of calories in it, it's a whole lot better than eating, you know, a bunch of faux products and refined carbohydrates. And, you know, and he wanted to insist. And I'm like, all right, so now you've been doing the low carb, high fat diet for how long? 2 years, and you've lost what? 60 pounds in that time. Still almost 400 pounds. And I'm like, really? You're not eating any refined carbohydrates, and you've cut your calories way down, and you've only lost 60 pounds in 2 years.
Yeah.
Something's wrong. So as soon as you eat a piece of bread, you're going to put that back on. I said, dude, just do a whole food plant-based diet. Don't tell me you're trying to do it a certain about um, you know, bio-individuality and different things like that. But you know, the fact of the matter is, if you're honest about what you're putting in your face, if you're eating whole food plant-based and you're filling your plate with primarily fruits and vegetables, you add your beans and grains and you know, nuts and seeds at the end, um, you're not going to have an issue. You know, so here I am. You had asked about sustained weight loss, and I'm on, my phone might die here, just so you know. I'm on well, over a year at the same weight, you know. And well, I've lost 2 inches on my waist size, but I've gained uh, quite a bit of muscle. So uh, you know, I've roughly stayed at about 180 pounds for over a year. So
And that's so important because so many people are yo-yoing. They'll do a ketogenic diet, or they'll do a Atkins diet, or a paleo diet, and they'll lose a lot of weight. And we both know that's not healthy weight loss, but they'll lose a lot of weight and they'll say, oh, wow,
well,
it has to be working.
you know, interesting. I'll make a comment on this. You know, most people that do that, they actually lose a lot of water weight initially, and they think that that's, you know, that's weight. And you know, I've seen plenty of studies now that on a ketogenic or a low carb diet, you actually lose muscle mass. And they're like, well, I'm getting plenty of protein. So no, that's actually not how it works. And that's, you know, because I'm getting muscle mass eating, you know, 400 plus grams of carbohydrates every single day, 400 grams of carbohydrates, and I lose and maintain weight, gain muscle. Go figure. totally different from that thinking, and it's totally faulty. I mean, people got to switch it. And I'm going to mention this resource real quick because I think it's invaluable. If there is anybody out there with the type 2 diabetes and even type 1 diabetes, masteringdiabetes.org is a fantastic organization that has helped people reverse their type 2 diabetes. And we're talking about type 1 diabetics that are keeping their fasting blood glucose at under 100 and their A1Cs at around 6 on a high carb diet. They switched it around. They included the whole grains and lots of whole grains. And you look at there's studies out there like the MAP2 macrobiotic diet, where all of the participants that were in that study were off insulin within 6 months, and their average HbA1c went from over 12 points to under 6 points. All of them, every single one of them on that study. Where else do you find that? 73% carbohydrates. So we got to switch this thinking. Carbohydrates aren't all the same. They're whole grains, legumes, beans, nuts, seeds. They're not the same as the refined processed crap. Two totally different categories, and carbohydrates are not a macronutrient. We need to stop looking at it that way and look at nutrient density and what we need in our bodies and feeding our bodies with the proper fuel.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you can't. We like to categorize things. We like to put numbers on things. We like to scientifically think about things.
Yes, we do.
Food is something greater than us, right? It's colorful. It's sweet. It's so simple when you look at it in just the simplest of terms. When you try to get really, sophisticated and you start to say, like, make up big words like ketogenic or ketosis, and I'm not saying this in any disregard to science. Science is extremely important, but when you just look at this from the most simplistic way, what are we supposed to eat? Oh, that stuff that falls from the tree, that's perfectly like sitting there for us, that's sweet and ripe and delicious and tells our endorphins that this is a good thing to eat. I mean, it's so easy. It was set up like in a way. We were so blessed to have the opportunity to eat all this gorgeous, delicious, colorful food. You walk in the produce section, you walk in the processed food section, you tell me what's prettier. No one in the world would ever say the produce section isn't the most beautiful part of the grocery store. It is gorgeous. The food is screaming at us, eat me.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It reproduces itself. It falls from the trees for ourselves. It grows in the ground for us. I mean, it's from the simplest outlook at this. If you don't know anything about science, anything about the math, anything about nutrition, if you just look at this from the most basic standpoint, what are you supposed to eat? The stuff that's bright and colorful tells you to eat it. That's sweet. That says, eat me. That makes you feel good and hydrates you. That makes you lose weight. That makes your skin clear. And that's just from the simplest standpoint. It's really, really crazy how easy it is when you really break it down.
Yeah. One of my favorite Instagram accounts is Eat the Rainbow.
Yeah.
It's so true.
So true. It's so true. It's so much prettier, so much cheaper, so much better tasting. When you eat this way, a lot of people say, well, what do you eat? Like, does it taste good? Oh, man, does it taste good. Come over to my house, and I'm sure go over to your house. Let me cook you a meal.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it'll be better. I'll blindfold taste test you. You can go eat your McDonald's burger, which is going to be made in a laboratory by scientists trying to recreate a flavor. And guess what that flavor is? Half the time, scientists are just recreating flavors of lemons and oranges. There's a multi-billion-dollar industry of scientists and going out into the fields and tasting the most delicious oranges from or mandarins from Japan, or tasting the most delicious fruit or vegetable from wherever in the country it's from, so that they can take that flavor, they can go back to a laboratory, they can study it, they can recreate it, put it in a processed food with none of the nutritional benefits or the fiber, put it on a shelf, sell it to you for more money than the actual fruit that flavor came from in the first place, and make you sick from it. So it's like, why wouldn't you go straight to the source? We now have the ability to have internet where I can talk to you when you're all the way in Michigan and I'm all the way in California. I can talk to people in Australia.
Well, and I got a comment. You got a code on, and I got a T-shirt on. That's negative numbers here.
Yeah. Look at that, man. Look at that. It's because I'm too skinny, man. I'm too skinny. I'm just kidding. You know what's one of the things that blows my mind is, so I'm an athlete and I go to the gym all the time. But I haven't been to the gym in 3 months, and that's not a good thing. And I advocate for exercise, but I advocate for exercise. I think that it's important, and I think that it's not the most essential thing. I
Oh,
think diet.
my phone's going down.
Oh, you're going down?
I'm going down. Yep.
All right. Well, we'll get out of here. But I was just gonna say, I advocate for exercise, but I think diet is the most essential thing. And on a plant-based diet, you actually keep your muscle and you stay in really, really good shape, and it's pretty incredible. All right, guys. I think we just lost Jeffrey, but wow, what an amazing interview! So much insight, and such a great guy. So I hope you guys are able to learn from this. And just like we both are saying, please become woke, or once you awaken, and please pass this forward. Help your friend, help your brother, help your sister, help your mom, help your dad, help your kid, help your grandkid, help your great grandkid, help your neighbor. Tell someone that this works, that it worked for you and it will work for others, but make sure you take care of yourselves first. Make sure you put your mask on first and start to ask questions about the things that you do every single day. Are they helping you or are they hurting you? Because that's the most important question that you can ask. And please enjoy your night, enjoy your weekend. Thank you, Jeffrey, for joining us. We'll have another episode coming up soon. I hope you guys really, really like this. Learning from people that are just everyday people like me and you, that are just went through some tough times and just wanted to put a smile on their face and live life a little bit easier.